Please take your seats. The meeting is about to begin. Remember to speak into the microphone, as this meeting is being recorded for public record. Please stand by. We are going on air in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello, everybody on Zoom and in the audience. I want to say that I don't think I've ever seen a packed chambers like this in a long time. I'm truly humbled by the engagement and the turnout, and a real community engagement about what's going on, because I think this is obviously very important to our city and precedents that we set above and beyond just today, but for generations to come. I'd like to first start off saying this meeting was publicly noticed. Minutes of this meeting will be taken, and the meeting is being recorded. Okay, again, thank you all for coming. I want to give a shout out to my wife, Lisette. We just had our first daughter, and I had, after having two sons, I'm officially a girl dad. So it's a new era for Commissioner Suarez. I want to go into the purpose of this town hall, and there's three components of this town hall, three main points that I plan on covering. First, I think it's important to really inform everyone about the proposed developments right now before the City Commission. The second part to this town hall, I want to go over a timeline of events on where we are today, and I'll have a brief presentation on that. And then lastly, I want to hear from you all. I want to hear some real engagement from the residents, because your voice matters. And I understand my colleague Commissioner Rosen Gonzalez is here, and Joe Magazine is here in the back. You guys don't have to be shy. You can come up here if you want. But everyone is watching this. I can promise you. So, if you speak, you will be heard. And I think that's important. I think that's the crux of what I'm trying to get to. Okay, so look, I want to start off by saying that the Standard Hotel is a grandfathered, non-conforming use. So that's just a fancy word for saying that if they change anything about their property, they lose their hotel use with the property. Since hotels are no longer allowed in the RM1 district, which is where the Standard currently is. Standard was made a very long time ago. Codes were completely different. We've since changed the codes to make sure that hotel use isn't allowed on Belle. So let me get into what is being requested for my vote and for my colleagues' vote, because I think that's very important to sort of lay out the facts of where are we and what is being proposed. I also have the planning director of the City of Miami Beach online. I'm going to add him as a panelist so I can ask him questions and he can confirm or deny some statements to be true. So let me see if I can get Tom on there. Mr. Planning Director, can you hear us?
I can hear you perfectly.
Great. Okay, thank you. By the way, Tom has been with us for like 30 years, so he knows this city. He's like our encyclopedia, except he's alive, and he knows the city in and out. It's amazing. Okay, so the city, I'm sorry, the Standard Hotel and the developer is asking for three main requests. Essentially, they want us to change our zoning code. And these are it. And I'm going to start with the biggest request, the biggest ask. Currently, the Standard Hotel sits on about 71,000 square feet. So if you look at the Standard Hotel, it's 71,000 square feet of FAR. That's on a lot size of about 101,000 square feet. The developer is asking the city commission to build an additional 50,000 extra square feet of FAR and new construction to the standard. Okay, in addition to the 71,000 square feet, that's almost a 2/3 increase in mass to this building. Uh, Mr. Planning Director, is that would you say that's a correct statement?
Yes, Commissioner, that's a correct statement.
Okay. Um, yeah, Tom, maybe you could put it on mute until I ask the question. Yeah, there's background noise. Thanks. The second thing that the developer is asking for is he is asking for a change of use. So that will allow an additional 6 residential high-end luxury units on the property. Okay. Right now, they currently cannot do that, and that is what they're requesting as part of these 3 requests. And the last thing that they're asking for is a lot aggregation. Currently, on the RM1 district, you're only allowed to have one lot, own one lot. The standard is asking to own 3 lots. Mr. Planning Director, can you confirm the last 2 requests?
Yes, I can confirm that both of those are correct.
Okay, thank you. And again, I think it's very important for everyone to understand that hotels are not a permitted use on Belle Isle. And this is a grandfathered structure and business on Belle Isle. So the moment they want to change anything, they have to request from the city commission, from my vote, from my colleagues' vote, permission to do that if they want to keep their hotel license. Okay. Now, you know, I've seen some rebuttal emails from the Belle Isle Resident Association claiming, and I quote, and this is from one of their emails, most of the standard hotel redevelopment proposal can be constructed by right. And so, Mr. Planning Director, as a right, is the standard hotel allowed to add 50,000 square feet of additional FAR to the standard hotel, essentially increasing their mass by 2/3, without violating their non-conforming status?
No, they're not. No, they're not.
Okay. As a right, are they allowed to offer 6 ultra high-end luxury residential units without violating their non-conforming status?
No, they're not. No, they're not.
Okay. And as a right, are they allowed to aggregate more than 1 lots to 3 lots total?
No, they're not. No, they're not.
Okay. So, Mr. Planning Director, just to make sure we covered all our bases, what is the standard hotel currently allowed to do as a right? Because I believe in 2017 there was a DRB approval for a demolition of 50% of their existing FAR of the 71,000 that they currently have. Maybe you can speak to that a little bit about what they're allowed to do as a right at this moment.
Sure. Under Chapter 2 of the City Code, which deals with nonconformances, the standard hotel, pursuant to a previous code amendment in 2017 and pursuant to DRB approval in 2017, was granted permission to construct a 2-story addition above parking, the floor area of which would be equal to the existing east wing. This proposal essentially proposed to demolish the east wing of the standard and reconstruct that floor area above parking. This proposal, though, still requires a building permit, and a building permit has not been obtained or submitted for this project.
Okay, so the 2017 approval that they have from the DRB, they're not in any way, shape, or form adding any extra construction or FAR to the project.
No, that approval simply allowed them to reconstruct existing floor area, but not to go beyond what they currently have.
Okay. So when the statement is alleged that most of the standard hotel's redevelopment proposal can be constructed by right, is that a factually incorrect statement, Mr. Planning Director?
Yes, it is factually incorrect.
Okay. Because the whole point, by the way, is to keep the hotel. You know, that they want to keep the hotel. So if they want to keep the hotel, they have to be within these bounds. So now that we have confirmation from our planning director, who is on the record, setting the record straight on what is a right and what is not a right, I want to get into a timeline of events that I think are important and why we're even here in the first place. So Tom, thank you so much. I took too much of your time on a Tuesday night. I'm gonna let you go. Okay. So PJ, can you start the slideshow, please? Okay. So I prepared a pretty brief presentation. Um, if you can go to the next slide, I think timelines are important. Okay, because it really sets sort of the stage of what's going on. In December of 2022, the Standard first reaches out to the Belle Isle Resident Association about their redevelopment plans. In January 23, BIRA sends out a survey, which was really about alcohol sales and like DJ music. I'm pretty sure everyone here who lives in Belle Isle may have gotten that survey. And it was overwhelmingly rejected by the residents. Okay, about a year and a half later, the Standard and the Belle Isle Resident Association sign a settlement agreement with a $1.2 million cash payment contingent upon government approvals. Now, PJ, if you could pause the slideshow, please. I was able to get a copy of this settlement agreement, and on page 10, which I'll have on the screen in a second, I think it's important. It says, the Standard owner shall pay a total sum of $1.2 million to BIRA in the following 3 installments. A, 30% within 15 days of execution of this agreement by all parties. B, 30% of 30-day final non-appealable approval of the development approvals defined as 30 days rendition after the design review board order approving the project or the effective date of a proposed legislation, whichever comes later. And C, 40% within 30 days of issuance of a master building for the project in furtherance of the development approvals, basically a permit. This agreement was signed on July 31st, and I'll get into why that's important. So if you go back to the slideshow, PJ, thanks. So that happened on July 31st. This is when it was timestamped. On August 14th, which is 15 days after this agreement, the first $360,000 was paid to Belle Isle. Okay. On August 27th, and this is what really disturbs me, the Standard lobbyist holds a webinar to inform Belle Isle residents of the Standard development plan. The problem with this is that they held a webinar basically a week after signing an agreement where they've already been paid for and they're already contractually obligated to support this project. On September 30, the Standard lobbyist files paperwork with the city disclosing the $1.2 million payout. You go to the next slide, please. Okay, on October 1st, there was a design review board meeting held. That's where a resident, and this is where I initially, found out about this, where a resident here, I believe she's here, Joe Ferrone, speaks out about the $1.2 million settlement. On October 14th, after I find out about what happens on October 1st, there's a committee meeting at Land Use where I strongly oppose this settlement agreement, and for reasons I'll get into in a little bit. Interestingly enough, 10 days after I raised the concerns about this $1.2 million settlement agreement, BIRA sends an email to the residents for the very first time, letting everyone know that that they have a $1.2 million check from the developer. On October 30th, the agreement was rewritten, and I'll go over that in a second. So if you can go to the next slide, please, PJ. Okay, so this was, I already read it to you. This is just a screenshot so everyone can see. And by the way, if anyone wants a copy, I'd be more than happy to provide a copy. So the standard owner shall pay a total sum of $1.2 million to BIRA in the following 3 installments. And you can see that 30% within 15 days of execution. That's August 14th. Next slide, please.
Good afternoon. I saw in your presentation there's a $1.2 million given to the BIRA Association. What is that for?
Well, technically, it's Nick. Do you know the name of the nonprofit that was created by the BIRA board? Is that
Yeah, I'm not recalling the name exactly. It's something along the Belle Improvement Trust, Inc., I believe.
Is there information anywhere where we can read what the use of that fund is and who's managing it?
well?
So, yeah, go ahead, Michael.
No, we don't have any. There are no strings attached by us. It would be up to your BIRA board of directors. So I would just say at the next monthly meeting, just raise this as a question.
By the way, I'll get into this at the end. As far as I know, there are no monthly meetings. The residents are not allowed to attend BIRA board meetings. I looked on their website. I don't see any meeting notices posted, and obviously that's a concern. Can you go to the next slide, PJ?
Is this proposed plan a done deal, or are you waiting for resident approval on a referendum on a ballot?
Our approval process is not dependent upon a popular vote by the residents of Belle Isle.
Yeah. So those were some of the objections that happened on this quote unquote webinar. And need I remind you that when this webinar happened, they're already contractually obligated to support this project. In fact, it's written down in a contract on page 9, and it says, BIRA, through a corporate officer or legal counsel, shall support the development approvals, including the proposed legislation and design review board application at one or more zoning public hearings as applicable, and any subsequent zoning applications needed to effectuate the project as set forth. Support shall consist of a letter signed by a BIRA corporate officer supporting the legislation referenced herein and the development approvals. The letter shall be submitted to council to the standard owner in advance of the public zoning hearing. 2, a statement of support at all associated zoning hearings, including the land use committee, the planning board, the city commission, and DRB, whether such meetings are held virtually or in person. 3, and this is what really I think is egregious. BIRA shall not appeal or encourage third parties to appeal the development approvals as applicable, and shall not challenge any and all building permits necessary to construct a project pursuant to the development approvals unless the development approvals do not conform with Exhibit A. That's important because they're basically bound by contract to not allow or not encourage people to go against this. PJ, can you go back to the next slide, please? Now, the next day, or not, on October 1st is when I personally first found out about what's going on.
The Belle Isle Residents Association has never represented me or most of my neighbors on Ferry Lane. I've never received any communication from them. I've never been invited to vote for the people who are, representatives on that board. I've never been in the least involved nor invited to be involved in the 15 years that I've lived on Ferry Lane. So to say that they represent the whole community is a stretch in my experience. That what I have a problem with is how this whole thing went down. I honestly have never seen these plans. Apparently, a negotiation happened. There was a settlement with a value of $1.27 million. I found out all this last week.
Okay. That look, that well, I was watching that, and when I saw that, I mean, you know, an alarm bell went off in my head about what's going on. And PJ, can you go to the next slide, please? I have on my phone text messages being lobbied on this item. It is 100%. There is 100% a lobbying effort to pass this item. And so now we have a situation where a new entity has been formed and payments are being made contingent upon a government approval. While I don't necessarily blame the business owner for this structure, this feels like extortion. I mean, guys, what kind of precedent are we allowed to be set here by allowing a new business owner of Miami Beach to be shaken down based on contingent deals for $1 million? So that's important to highlight. And this agreement, most of it is illegal. And what do I mean by illegal? You're not allowed to have, in the city of Miami Beach, or most, even the county, you're not allowed to have deals that are contingent upon the commission vote. So, for example, there can be a lobbyist that says to a developer, hey, you're telling me that all I need to do is get 4 or 5 votes, and you give and you give me $2 million, I'll get those 5 votes. And you can imagine what kind of dangerous precedent that set. And 15 years ago, Miami Beach wised up, and we changed that law. And so when you go to, you know, page 10, where it shows, you know, part B, where it says 30% within 30 days of final non-appealable approvals, that's basically waiting for the commission to approve this in order for the next payment to go through, and then 40% after the building permit is issued. So I wanted to go over it, PJ, I wanted to actually show you in person what the code is that I'm talking about that makes this agreement illegal. So PJ, can you put it up on the screen? I think it's the next slide. Yeah, so I just wanted to mention that October 24th, after I spoke, the very first time that Belle Isle Resident Association sent out a mass communication about this $1.2 million agreement was basically 10 days after that meeting. So if you go to the next slide, please. And this, I'm going to read it off to you. And I think this is important for everyone to understand. No person or entity may, in whole or in part, pay, give, or agree to pay, or give a contingency fee to another person. No person, in whole or in part, receive or agree to receive a contingency fee. And this is what the parts 1, 2, 3 is important. A contingency, what is it? An ordinance, a resolution, action, or decision of the city commission, any action, decision, or recommendation of the city manager or any city board, such as like the DRB, and any action, decision, or recommendation of city personnel during the period of time, the entire decision-making process regulating such action, which is basically a building permit. Can you go to the next slide, please? So after I raised these concerns, after I raised these concerns at the committee land use meeting, lo and behold, the developer changes the agreement on October 30th so that it's no longer contingent. It's now based on a timeline. So same page, page 10, and it's no longer based on how we vote. They're basically guaranteeing the $1.2 million on May 15th, 2025 and October 1st, 2026. So you can imagine what I'm going through when I'm researching this, and then all of a sudden, it's almost it's almost disrespectful that a new development plan, or I'm sorry, a new settlement agreement is changed just to make sure that it's somehow legal. Next slide, please. And like I said before, and this is very important, BIRA is contractually obligated to support the standard. Okay, they are, or they can get sued, and so if there's a BIRA board member that speaks and says, "Hey, this is a great proposal," they're saying this because they're contractually obligated to, and they can't go back on what they want to do, or what they've agreed to. Next slide, please. I mentioned this earlier. BIRA is not elected. Okay, applicants need to apply to be BIRA board members. In fact, there's a woman here, Faye, hi, where she actually requested to be on BIRA because she's now the president of the Vistas condominium. And basically they said it doesn't work like that. There's no official vote. There is a nominating committee, apparently, made up of BIRA board members to discuss if they're qualified enough to be on the board. Yeah, it's bizarre. So it's almost like a fraternity or sorority that you know they only let, I guess, their friends in. So I think that's the last slide, PJ. Okay, so what have I been doing over the last few weeks besides being a new girl dad? Let me see. I've been doing what the standard and the developer should have been doing is doing some real community engagement. Okay, you know, I've been requesting HOA meetings of the handful of condominium buildings on Belle Isle. There's not that many. You know, for example, I went to the Vistas condominium here, which is, by the way, adjacent to the standard, effectively being the most impacted by this development. And you would think that the residents there had a good idea of what's going on. No, and it gets even more strange because the president, up until I think last September, of the Vistas was Kara Glazer. And she was the president of the Vistas. She resigned in September, I believe. And when I went 2 weeks ago to discuss about what's going on in this agreement, no one had any idea what I was talking about. And mind you, this was the president of this condominium association, and there was about 20 or 30 people present in this meeting, and not one of them knew that there was a deal being negotiated or there was any sort of input into what this was. So I find it also strange that Kara Glazer is one of the 3 people on an entity controlling this money, this $1.2 million. And if I go to sunbiz.org right now to see to see if this person's still on here, I just went on right now. She's still listed as a signator on this nonprofit that's going to be controlling $1.2 million of developer money. And from what I understand, this person does not even live in Miami Beach anymore. Their condo is for sale. That's, to me, very troubling. Now, look, I want everyone to understand that I don't like doing this, okay? It's uncomfortable for me. I don't like to expose what I think are like pay-for-play schemes in some instances where people I know, you know, in reality, I'm sort of like an introvert. I'm not a combative person. Um, by doing this, I've pretty much made lifelong political enemies on the Belle Isle Resident Association. I'm probably pissing off a couple billionaires, developers, and some very high-powered lobbyists. Um, thanks. And I want to say, look, I've got nothing to gain by doing this. I I just got elected. I'm only been on the job for a year. I've got another 3 years to go. Um, I don't particularly enjoy spending precious time as a father away from my children, going to HOA meetings and holding town halls. I don't particularly like spending hours or hundreds of hours of research on a subject that before I got elected, I really didn't care about. I know more about the standard today than most people in this city. Um, and it takes time away from like family and look, it's a lot, but who's going to do it, right? I mean, who's going to stand up and say like, look, this is enough is enough. I obviously have a family here. I want to grow my family here. I want to have more children. I want to have a city where my children aren't going to be given a place where this sort of pay for play backroom dealing is just commonplace. Um, I campaigned on accountability and transparency, and just doing the right thing for the residents, making sure your voices are heard. Um, and and look, I that's essentially what I signed up for. This is the job that I took. And unfortunately, there's a lot of good aspects to it, but there's also a lot of uncomfortable parts to this job that that frankly just need to be done. Um, and look, when I go to a handful of condos on Belle Isle, and most people have no idea about what happened and this agreement, I personally felt I had to do something, and that's why we're here today. Um, Because if you think about it, like what kind of precedent are we setting here by not exposing this or not paying attention to it? The next going rate of every project is going to be a $1.2 million fee for an unelected group of people who just decide to get together and say, we're this neighborhood association, and now Mr. Business owner or developer or anyone, maybe you want to open up like just a mom and pop restaurant. Now that the going rate is this. I mean, imagine what kind of precedent we're setting by doing this. Um, so, I want to call out a few emails, or I want to respond to some of the emails that Belle Isle have sent out. And I think it's important. I think it's important to really discuss some of the arguments that are being made. On for example, let's take at face value that this $1.2 million, what would they actually spend it on? Okay, and I copied and pasted. Placing the community benefit money in a not-for-profit entity and not in the Miami Beach General Fund prevents the city from using the funds for other priorities or neighborhoods of their choosing, a practice that has occurred in the past. The residents of Belle Isle will decide how this 1.2 million is spent. Some areas may include yoga, fitness, soccer camps in the park for children, social gatherings, social events, possible small ensembles from Miami City Ballet and the New World Symphony, and other suggestions from our creative and diverse community. Yoga? Okay? It's ridiculous. When I went to Nine Island the other day, I was actually on last on the agenda to speak, and I'm glad I showed up a little earlier because I got a little taste of what they the issues of that condominium that were really important to them. And you know what they were talking about? They were talking about their seawall. They're talking about spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on seawall repair. That's a real issue that people care about on Belle Isle. And the fact that, you have this unelected group wanting to spend money on yoga, it's ridiculous. Children's soccer camps. And by the way, you know, how do you know this board isn't giving favors to the yoga instructors or the soccer camps? How do you know they're not overpaying it? How do you even know that they're a convicted felon? How do you know that they're not sex offenders? You know, the the problem is when you take the money and you don't have the city at least have a partner in this, you really lose all sort of transparency. There's no one to decide who gets, who decides how much money gets spent, on what and when. And look, I want you to know, I'm a very, I'm a very limited kind of a government kind of guy. Okay, but over the course of the last year, I've really appreciated the process of government. Okay, and the safeguards that government has for how taxpayer money is spent. We're not perfect. I could certainly say that, but there's a process, and because of this process, there is a paper trail. You have transparency on how everything is spent, how it's spent, uh, and that's important because when you want to know who got the award for soccer camps or yoga, you're going to you're going to know there was a procurement process. The person doing the instruction is not is not a threat to the residents, and it's a problem. And again, I think this sort of sets a really bad precedent on how we want to act as a city. One last thing I want to touch up on before we get into question and answers, and on this same email is about the lobbying. Okay, it says Commissioner Suarez has stated that he has been lobbied by BIRA. This is another false statement. Click here to watch and see his false statement. He is referring to a single text message he received on October 4th. There are no other text messages on this item other than this one message. Below is that unedited text message. Judge for yourself if this was anything sinister in this text or if it was just a text message from a neighborhood association reviewing an important issue affecting Belle Isle residents with a commissioner. So let me talk about this text. And by the way, he also says, before this text communications with this commissioner were common, as he had texted BIRA over 80 times. Now that's true. I had a really good relation, I think I still do, I hope, with Sean Patrick Bryant, who is the president of BIRA. We talked ad nauseum about a lot of the derelict boats on the bay, because that's one of the things that I'm very passionate about. I want to make sure that our bay is clean, that there's no poop being flushed into the bay. And as the president of BIRA, I wanted to see how we can help each other. But the moment he text messaged me, lobbying me and asking me to support this project, which, by the way, he never mentioned a $1.2 million payment, I was bound by law to report it. And here's one of the nuances that I learn as a city official. If you are getting lobbied by someone for money and they're not a registered lobbyist, and if you don't report that, you're in trouble. All my text messages are open to, well, at least text messages with city managers are open to public records requests. If someone public record requested Sean and they saw that he's lobbying me on this item, I could get in trouble. At that point, I had to report this to the Ethics Commission, and at which point I could not engage with him. So I think it's important that I clear my name. Um, you know, I'm certain, like I said before, this is very uncomfortable for me. And but again, look, I didn't get elected to just make friends. I didn't get elected to keep friends. I didn't get elected to get reelected. I got elected to do a job, and this is my job. And when I see something that I believe is fundamentally wrong and sets a bad precedent for our future, I'm going to do what I can to stop it. And so, with that being said, I'd love to hear from the audience. There's, I think, let's see, there's almost 300 people on Zoom. There's about 100 people here. I'd love to hear what you said, because at the end of the day, I want everyone to know everyone's watching. The commissioners are certainly watching. The mayor's watching. I believe the Herald is watching here. I think it's important for the residents to sort of speak out and voice their, I don't know, their concerns, their suggestions. So if you want to line up and speak, I'm not a fan of putting time limits on individual speakers, but feel free to go ahead and speak. Here, go ahead, Monica. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Monica Tracy, and I've lived at 5 Island Avenue for 38 years. I was on the BIRA board for 12 years, 10 of them as secretary, and it was a small neighborhood active residents association with an active board. We had a nominating committee of at least 2 people or more with up to 15 board members. And we also had our meetings were not open to the public, but anybody could sit in. We went through a lot of people, came on and off the board. And we had an annual meeting once a year. It's one of the condominiums. We would get our money from the condos, mostly from the buildings, like a few $100s a year. And that's how it was set up. We had so much integrity that we would not even endorse a candidate. I mean, we were squeaky clean. So I was so dismayed 4 years ago when the old board broke up. They were tired. They had run this for 15 years. And so I stepped off the board then. But the standard is, needs to be able to do what changes to their property, and I appreciate that. But it seems like the mass of the building will be huge on the east side as opposed to the rest of the building. It might look a little awkward, but thank you for letting me speak.
Sure.
Roberto, I'm at West and 17 corner, the West Bay Plaza across from Trader Joe. So you know what kind of a hell we've been living for about 2 years now. And concerning Belle, if there had been a vote by Miami Beach residents about this project, we would have the same disaster that we have with I call it, not me, a lot of people call it the Godzilla, South Beach Godzilla. Alton and 5th, 50-story high. Now we have 1250 coming on west, another monster. They're gonna take the.
Well, that's not approved.
You know what I'm saying? So I'm glad that there was no vote by Miami Beach people. What I'm saying is I love democracy, but when you have people who are not informed, even the people of Belle Isle, they don't know what's going on, like I said. So I'm so glad that you caught it. And I would like to know why the lawyer isn't here, because I wonder if there is a crime here by the association taking this money.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for speaking.
Hi, I'm Scott Newman. I live at the Grand Venetian on Belle Island. I have a couple of questions that I want to run through. One is that it's not unusual for developers to provide a public benefit to the local community in which they're making their development project. And in this case, it's a public benefit specifically to the residents, to the Belle Island Association. You're raising it as an issue different from any other public benefit that's been provided to the city. And from what I'm gathering, it's because the money is going to a local charity as opposed to the city itself. Is that the case?
Yeah, so there's many reasons why I'm raising this concern, but ultimately, when it goes to a private entity, only the private entity gets to decide how the money's spent, who the money gets spent
charity.
on.
It's
Well,
going to a charity, right? Or a nonprofit.
Correct.
Nonprofit. So money transfers from corporations to nonprofits all the time. Corporations make donations to nonprofits. In this case, it happens to be specific to Belle Island from a corporation that is investing in Belle Island. And so my next question to you is, why would, as a city commissioner, I am sure that there are so many other more important issues that the city has to be dealing with. Why would you insert yourself? I listened to him speak for 45 minutes. So please give me the right to speak. So this is a donation from a corporation, a development corporation, investing on the island to a nonprofit. Why would it be a commissioner issue when these kind of donations happen all the time? Corporations make donations to nonprofits all the time.
So, well, there's a couple things wrong.
Let me build on that.
We'll dialogue.
Okay, I didn't know how much time I have, so that's why.
No, there's no time. But just be mindful that there are people who want to speak also.
Yeah.
So, first of all, the original agreement was illegal, right? You can't have a contingency fee based on how I vote, correct? Because, again, that sort of sets a bad precedent.
Sure.
But the moment they did that, it already sort of sets the stage for a contingency fee. I mean, they already got the DRB approval. They already have the support of the neighborhood association, and the whole point about having a contingency for prohibition is to not have a city where unelected neighborhood associations can just get together. Three people can unilaterally get together and say, hey, I'm a neighborhood association. Mr. Developer, you need to give me $1.2 million or else I'm going to fight you on this project. I certainly don't want to live in a city like that. I'm pretty sure everyone here doesn't want to live in a city like that. I think that is unethically wrong. And listen, you can, I mean, we can debate on the merits on that, but for me, I think that's highly unethical. I think that is going to set a bad precedent. And there's a saying that when I was at Nine Island, there's like, that's so Miami, and that's what I don't want Miami Beach to be, a breeding ground of play for pay.
I get it. However, one of the reasons, and I may not have this exactly correct, but I believe that BIRA has no real input into whether this project gets approved or not approved. BIRA is just another, if it's an association, it's another resident of the island, just like all the other residents.
Well, actually, if I'm looking at their agreement in plain English, it says that they have to. Hold on. That they are required to support it, and it goes above and beyond requirement. It actually says that they cannot encourage third parties to appeal.
I heard you the first time.
There is certainly an eagerness to support the project.
I heard you.
Yeah.
What you didn't read in that was the reasons why BIRA was supporting the project. Because there's a whole list of reasons, and those reasons why BIRA is supporting the project, and I'm not affiliated with BIRA at all, just for clarity, it's a whole list of issues that the residents of Belle Island have been complaining about. It addresses traffic. It addresses a whole slew of issues that are embedded in that agreement. And you didn't read those.
By the way, and those that those issues that they've listed are great, but it shouldn't cost $1.2 million.
Well, it's not costing BIRA anything.
Well,
The
to be
developer is
I mean,
providing a public benefit.
Steve, right?
Sorry.
Steve?
It's Scott. but
Scott,
thank you
sorry.
for-
So
thank you for
just
that.
to be fair, and I didn't mention this in my presentation, but I talked to the developer before all of this, and I asked him point blank, and Brandon was here. He was there. I asked him, "What's going on here? Like, Miguel, what's this is ridiculous." And you know what he told me? He goes, "David, you know, this is," and I asked him, "Is this your first project in Miami Beach?" And he said, "Yes." And I go, well, tell me about what's going on. He's like, "Look, this is my first project. This is the first time I'm dealing with this lobbyist. And as we progressed over the course of this year, I felt super uncomfortable. I felt like I was getting extorted." This is what he was telling me. Okay.
Okay.
So hold on. I'm giving you a real world example.
I understand.
And specific to this agreement where the developer is telling me that he's getting shaken down. Now, to me, what am I supposed to do with that information? Am I supposed to just say, "Look, you know, this is just the way things go because corporations give to nonprofits all the time"? No, I think.
But developers give to the city all the time for public benefit.
Yeah, I understand
How
that.
much did the city get from the development at Fifth and Alton to build the bridge and to do that work there?
But this isn't about it. This isn't about a public benefit to the city.
This is Belle Island is a city.
And I'm actually glad you brought that up. By the way, Steve, I'm actually glad you brought that up because Belle Isle doesn't own any property. They don't own sidewalks or parks. They don't own seawalls. The city does. So if there was going to be any sort of public benefit that the residents of Belle Isle has, then it would have to have been funneled through the city anyways.
However, when it is funneled through the city, it gets redirected to other neighborhoods.
Listen, I can only
So-
speak for myself,
and-
and I think what you're referring to is a commissioner. I think it was Commissioner Alaman. That was the allegation that she somehow funneled the money from West Avenue because of a project to North Beach, and they got misappropriated the funds. But listen, at the end of the day, it would have been very easy for the city to be involved, for the city to earmark these funds for Belle Isle, perhaps set up a committee, a committee of Belle Isle
which could
residents
be changed
where
at any time, and any new next commission can change that,
I-
right? So the last point I want to make is the third point that I'd like to make.
Sorry, may I, can we have a minute too, please?
it's okay. He's
I
almost
have
done.
one more point to make.
Sure.
I have one more point to make, and that is, it's a nonprofit, and nonprofits, you kept,
5 hours?
Yeah, okay, I'm gonna let him finish his point, and then we're gonna move on. Okay.
you raised consistently throughout your presentation that these are unelected members. No association elects its members through its neighborhood.
Actually, Sovna does.
One. Can you name any others? There's thousands throughout the country.
None others are getting
And-
$1.2 million.
And nonprofits don't elect their members through their constituency.
Thank you, Steve.
So
And I'd be more than happy to discuss offline. So obviously,
we
there's
can
a
do
lot
that,
of
but I
people.
did want to make that point.
I just want to add this quickly. Listen, this is about putting the Belle all aside. I'm sorry, putting the Belle all aside. This is about code. Let's also put in mind that this project is against the code.
Thank you. I just so we could set the stage, I'd like to have everyone speak. If you've already spoken, please allow other people to.
There's a line, I'm sorry, but I apologize. I apologize to you.
Okay.
I took so long, I didn't.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Linda Tepper. My husband Stephen Abrams and I live at 9 Island Avenue. We've been members of the Standard for a number of years. We love having it across the street from us. It's a great place. However, I don't think there's anybody that lives on Belle Isle that wants to see this happen. All the standard needs to do is address the parking situation. And if they can stay within their footprint, do a parking garage with the same amount of hotel room units above it. What I understand from you is that that's grandfathered in, correct?
What's grandfathered in is their hotel use and any sort of
Right,
change.
so no condos. If they got rid
Correct.
of the condos, address the parking situation, put the same number of hotel rooms on top of that, that would be feasible, correct?
Look, in a perfect world, we would have them do what we want them to do, but that's also dependent on their interest and what they want to do. So, they would have to come to us and say, look, this is the new offer that we want to do.
You can't go to them, or your lawyer can't go to their lawyer and say, this is what we're going to allow you to do?
We could.
Because
Well, that would take a
if
that would
they
take a
are aware, or their lawyer is aware, that what they propose to do, is not grandfathered in, wouldn't they want to stay within what is grandfathered? Are they aware of it?
I can't speak for them, ma'am.
Well, how do we know? I mean, you guys have a lawyer. Can't
Yeah,
your
I mean,
lawyer contact their lawyer and discuss with him what would be feasible and what is not? Because those guys have a lot of money.
Yeah.
Peter Thiel, forget it. Huge Trump supporter, with very, very deep pockets.
All right, thank you. Next speaker, please. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioner. I would like to thank you for making the time to have us all here and participate, advocate, and engage with the community and be away from your family. It says a lot of who you are and what you're trying to do, and I want to thank you. My name is Mariela Lopez Del Bear. I grew up in 2812 Prairie Avenue. My parents, Dr. Lopez and Emma Lopez, still reside there. We went to Beach High, now it's North Beach, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. I also served on the board in the Upper East Side, Bayside. I'm an advocate, and I'm really passionate about saving and preserving our surrounding neighborhoods and not letting the developers come and run us over, which is what's happening everywhere you go. City of Miami, Miami Beach, Fort Lauderdale, Delray. It's really, really sad what the developers are trying to do. I always say, we don't live in a zip code, we live in a planet, preserve it and share it. It is time that the community stands up to the developers, that the commissioners and the government come in and say, listen, you just can't come in and ram out what you want here. You got surrounding neighborhoods, you got livelihoods and quality of life, and you need to respect that. And if you can't respect that, then this is not where you belong. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Faye.
Hello, how you doing? Thank you, Commissioner. The Vistas Condominium Association really appreciates you bringing some transparency into this situation. I'm the present president, but prior to that, I was on the board. And I had no idea of this situation. I resent someone feeling that they could represent my interests without my permission and without even coming to me and asking me what my needs are. The Vistas have a lot of needs, but yoga classes is not one of them. So if the developer wants to be a good neighbor, they would come to us, the individual complexes, and ask, how can we reduce the impact of our development? Not give it to 3 other individuals, some of which do not live on Belle Isle any longer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Suarez, for bringing all of these issues to our attention. My name is Alex Jimenez. I've lived on Belle Isle for 6 years, and I was on the Belle Isle Residents Association during these negotiations. but I resigned 14 minutes before they voted because I couldn't vote for an agreement that they wouldn't get your input on. It was really upsetting. So today I want to read some internal emails. So some of you may have gotten a survey January 3rd, 2023 about expanding music and DJ music. Raise your hand if you received a survey from the Belle Residents Association 2 years ago. It's like 2 years ago about music and things like that. So I wrote that survey when I first joined BIRA. I joined BIRA in December of 2022. The reason we did that was because in December of 2022, December 16th, 2022, I joined 2 days before or 2 days after. Michael Larkin, the attorney for the standard, sent a letter to BIRA outlining short and long-term goals for the standard, including extended alcohol hours and DJ music, as well as the construction of a 5-story building with 6 luxury residences. A meeting to discuss these plans occurred between the standard and BIRA in 2022. They were very opposed to the music. The BIRA board was very opposed to the music and the alcohol hours. I'm a member of the standard. It's my home. I love it. I actually was the only one on the board. I just joined. And I was like, well, maybe we could let them do 1 a.m. every once in a while, or they could have some music once a week or something. They were very anti-standard. They said, you got to do this survey now. So on January 3rd, so just within a few weeks, we sent a survey to residents, and like 80% of residents said no. So 3 days later, I thought that would be a really good idea. I emailed the president of BIRA at the time. And I said, we need to post a letter that Michael Larkin sent us. Because in the letter, it says we want alcohol, we want music, and we want a 5-story building. And this is in 2022. So I emailed them, president.
Just to be clear, what letter are you talking about?
There was a letter that Michael Larkin sent to BIRA on December 16th of 2022.
Okay.
So I wanted to post a letter online for you guys to see, email it. We have a big email list. So I said, can I, I want to post this. Can I post this? Scott responded, quote, only post the attachment, not the letter. End quote. The attachment he's mentioning only has alcohol music hours on it, not the 5-story building. Then I responded, quote, why not the letter? BIRA is a neighborhood association, not a corporation. Don't we want to improve transparency? Question mark. End quote. Scott replied, I don't want the correspondence posted. So this was the beginning of the secret sort of, and the problem that I have is not with any of the merits of the standards, projected ideas, or whatever. I really was upset they wouldn't tell the residents, they were, who do you think you are? This is a neighborhood association. You've got to tell the residents what you're doing. We just did it with a survey, 3 days before. So why all of a sudden you don't want to do any more surveys?
So just to be clear and make sure that everyone understands, there was alcohol hours. There was an idea from the standard through their lobbyist to request after hours music, DJ, and a possibility of a larger development where there's...
No, they gave us drawings. No, this is our long-term plan.
And so you're telling me that BIRA did not want you to inform through communications the residents of these long-term plans?
No, they didn't want me to post technically he didn't want me to post the letter, and they also didn't want us to talk about it.
And this was the president of BIRA at the time?
Scott Van Hove, he was the then president.
Okay.
So, there's a lot of emails, so I picked 4 of my favorites, right? So, anyway, so I got all of them here. If you want, I'll show them all to you in the back later. November 15, 2023. So this is this is a bit after that, right? I raised concerns in an email to the newly formed standard subcommittee because about a month before they created some sort of subcommittee, and that was going to be the 3 people who were going to negotiate with the standard. And I wrote, quote, "This process is not public enough. Why can't residents join our board meetings? Question mark. Please let me know if I can help you do a survey or a presentation." End quote. Let's see if you can guess what happened. My email went unanswered and negotiations continued privately. 7 months later, on June 19, 2024, with the plans almost finalized, I emailed BIRA President Sean Patrick Bryant, quote, "Are we opening it up to the actual residents of the island? How much of the process will continue to be behind closed doors? Question mark." This is like 16 months or 18 months after we get the letter. Sean replied, quote, "This meeting will be for BIRA board members to review and see if there are any issues that require further discussion. The same information will then be presented to all of the residents of Belle Isle. We are presenting everything we know to the residents of Belle Isle. Nothing held back." So we met with the standard, and they showed, I received a packet, basically. We all got a packet. Jack Robbins sent everyone a packet. And the packet had the first time we saw the settlement agreement, the board. This is June, July, I'm gonna give you the date. And it didn't have, the settlement agreement amount was blank. So even the board, I was getting a copy, I'm on the board, and I was getting a copy that didn't have the amount. So even I didn't know the amount of the money, because I was sort of like, it was blank. So, very interesting. So we had that was June 26th. I want to give you the date. June 26, 2024, Jack Robbins sends the BIRA board a meeting packet which includes a draft of the settlement agreement with the public benefit contribution left blank. He also told us this is not a negotiating session, so he said, "Keep your questions and comments focused." One day later,
this is you as a BIRA board member.
he's telling the BIRA board this. Yeah, like you guys need to, this is not negotiation. You guys need to keep your questions focused.
A negotiation in terms of what?
Like between the BIRA board members, because it's a private meeting.
Private meeting between the three individuals?
Well, no, it was also with the standard. It was with the board and the standard the next day. It was like a prep. They sent like a packet the day before.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, "Hey, this isn't your chance to start trying to get something. Okay. This is an opportunity for you to."
Well, I'd love to see what other internal emails you guys you have.
So, because this is so crazy that Belle Isle, and I love the standard. Let me tell you, I get it. They want to maybe renovate or they have ideas. Go to the residents. Just knock on. You could have they have like 10 buildings. They just go to each one, have a meeting on every Saturday, do a different one, and you save yourself $1 million. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So this whole time, I'm really upset. So the next day, June 27, 2024, this is the next day I got the packet with the 0 on the. So the BIRA board convened with Michael Larkin and the Standard team to discuss the proposed agreement with the Standard Hotel. I objected to the settlement agreement and I expressed my concerns. I said, "There's nothing in here for Ferry Lane. There's nothing in here for Century Lane. There's nothing in here for anybody. This is crazy." I said, if we're gonna get any sort of anywhere with you guys, it has to be in the settlement agreement. We're not gonna do a deal later. No one should approve, and I said it, no one should approve, of course, we don't have the minutes, but, it was verbal. But I said, nobody should approve this unless it's all, we got to get everything we want. If we're going to do it this way, we got to make sure we get everything we want here. So the next day, Sean Patrick emailed me to follow up with me about my concerns, and he suggested that I dealt with the standards separately to gain more concessions, meaning cut a private deal for either me or my neighbors, on Ferry Lane.
So you're telling me that the BIRA board president said to a BIRA board member that if you have concerns, you just have another side deal?
Yeah. It's crazy. I mean, I'll be here all day.
I think, I would love to see some of these communications. I think the public deserves to see it. And,
Sure.
it would really, where Steve.
Remember, it's a neighborhood association.
Yeah, and look, that
It's
sort of paints not a good picture, Steve, of where Scott, I'm sorry, of where of like transparency, because that's at the end of the day, if there was a transparent process in this, if the residents actually knew about what's going on, I wouldn't be here. But really, in reality, you have a neighborhood association using the goodwill or the coattails of its goodwill that had been built up over the decade, and over the years.
It was a good organization when I joined.
And they use that to influence a monetary settlement agreement to a private entity in which they control. They control who gets on the board, who gets off the board. And as an elected official, I'm sure you can appreciate that I have concerns with that.
Well, okay, so on the charity issue, remember I was on the board, so I can tell you everything you want to know. So, Belle Residents Association is not a 501c3. When I was on the board, I remember asking specifically about it. It's not a 501c3. They created an affiliate when they got the money, and they called it a charity. A charity has to do good things first to be called a charity, in my opinion. You can I can start a charity tomorrow. I mean, but you've got to, it's a 501c3 is a legal charity. So maybe I don't know. I haven't seen the documents. I don't know if they sent them to you guys. They don't seem to want to send anything to you guys.
Forming my own board. I'm
But-
going to 1.2 million.
Yeah. But they haven't published their 501c3 stuff to you guys. Have they sent you guys anything or anything about the?
Alex, thank you, Alex. Let the rest.
So the last thing I want to say is the last board meeting was on July 24th, and I resigned 14 minutes before they convened to vote because I refused to vote on the agreement without the consent of the residents of Belle Isle. And, I'm sorry I couldn't do more, but these people, didn't want to tell you guys. So that's the truth.
Good evening. I'm Brian Ehrlich. I also live on Belle Isle, is the name of the island, at 5 Island Avenue. I'm on the Board of Historic Preservation as well, so this discussion is very personal to me. I think from what we've heard tonight, this project is a clear example of how broken processes have eroded the trust and robbed us of being able to make a transformative project. I, like the other residents here, value the standard as our neighbor. I view it as our partner, and but there should be a process in which these types of agreements happen, and they should be done to the letter of the law. Miami Beach has a proud history of visionary development. My mentor was Tony Goldman. He revived the Art Deco district by working hand in hand with the community. He made Miami Beach a global destination, but today we have drifted from those principles. This project wasn't about engaging residents or addressing real needs, as we've mentioned. It was about backroom deals and a neighborhood association that used this project to enhance its own power. We can do better. Let's go a little bit through some of the events, although we've gone through most of them. I think we all recall that survey in January of 2023. What struck me about it was so narrow. I didn't know that Alex was working on it and that it kind of predated, this next development. But I felt like there was no vision for a master plan, no talk about infrastructure, traffic congestion, and how, by the way, the standard getting redeveloped over the course of 5 years and done concurrently with the movement of all of our underground utilities would also be majorly complicated and a huge obstruction for the residents of Belle Isle and of the city. Then for the next 18 months, it sounds like we all have the same viewpoint of what happened. Silence. No updates, no engagement. During this time, BIRA also failed to hold its annual 2024 meeting in which they were supposed to elect a new board. Not sure what happened there. I'm sure Mr. Gismanis can help us with putting those pieces together. And it left the residents totally excluded from the decision-making process. Deeply concerning. As the commissioner mentioned, on July 31st, 2024, that was 18 months later, BIRA signed this settlement agreement with the developer, obligating BIRA and its officers to unconditionally support the project, barring them from opposing it, and as you mentioned earlier, Commissioner, suggesting that there should be no perhaps discussion of any critique of those approvals. And 2 weeks later, they received their money into this affiliate that we just heard from Alex was recently opened. I think most of us remember August 27th. That was a few days before Labor Day, when most people take vacations. And residents were finally invited to a meeting. But by then, the deal had already been signed. This wasn't community input. It was a staged event made to look like there was transparency involved. Now, at the time, I was also serving as a member of the board of Island Terrace at 5 Island Avenue. I discovered that our board president, who also served as BIRA's vice president, had been negotiating directly with the developer of the standard. Let me tell you something. These discussions were never discussed to our board, to any of the members, to our residents. I reviewed the meeting agendas, and not once was this project mentioned by the president, who controls the agenda. I also confronted the board president, probably around October of last year, and asked him for an explanation of those negotiations, and he stonewalled me, telling me that it was none of my business. That BIRA was a private entity, and it had nothing to do with the condo association and with any of the matters that we were discussing. No less that we were discussing deferred maintenance and special assessments that, as you pointed out, Mr. Commissioner, directly related to improvements on our seawall and other necessary infrastructure improvements with concrete intrusion and the like. He refused to provide any detail to me. He had the opportunity, he had the means, and he had the resources, but he chose not to. To make matters worse, many other BIRA board officers also held dual roles as presidents of their condo. How coincidental. Creating glaring conflicts of interest and allowing them to negotiate in secret with the developer without any community oversight. Now let's talk about what's actually in the project. As you mentioned, it's 50,000 square feet of additional density that is not currently allowed with the grandfathered property. There's also a height increase, by the way. I believe it goes up to around 50 feet with a potential 5-foot variance. Is that correct? 8-foot variance, so it's 58 feet.
5 feet on the DRB and 3 feet on a variance.
Okay. And then I believe also, just for our north-facing residents who live here, there's also allowances for cooling towers and other equipment. So those are all really, really germane facts, I think, that should have been brought up during this process so that you could have understood what that effect would have had on your view and on our neighborhood. Also, there was no long-term commitment to retain the standard brand, meaning that the hotel could rebrand itself after the 12-year, I believe it's a 12-year contract that exists, that when the owners of the standard, when that contract expires. So the standard could lose its identity entirely as a standard and be replaced by one of the developer's other brands, like Baccarat or Treehouse or some of the other Starwood brands. These changes will have a significant impact on our residents. We know that, and all but a few unelected people were kept in the dark until after the deal was finalized. This wasn't just a failure of transparency, though. It was a failure of vision, a failure of imagination. Instead of working with residents to create something extraordinary for Belle Isle, The project was just reduced to a transaction. Think about how we could have reimagined Belle Isle. We could have created a botanical garden, a Gramercy Park style green space with shaded paths offering a peaceful retreat for people. We could have had an art sculpture park elevating Belle Isle's cultural cachet. We could have increased waterfront connections, combining essential repairs that need to be made all over this city with seawall repairs with public access to the water. None of these ideas were explored. BIRA never asked residents to shape a vision for Belle Isle's future because they didn't care. Instead, they focused solely on securing a $1.2 million payout, consolidating power, and ignoring the voices of the community. This flawed process must end, in my opinion. Here's what we need to do. Number one, BIRA should return the $1.2 million to prevent a misuse of funds. In fact, I also believe if you were even going to renegotiate such a deal, that $1.2 million is not enough. Just for the record. But I do agree with you, Commissioner, that it should go through the proper city channels. Number two, we should restart the project approvals with a full community input and with full transparency. And lastly, we should elect new leadership on Belle Isle. The current board should be dissolved, and we should require those attorneys and those lobbyists that were advising these people that they need to step aside as well. Absolutely. The current board is not fit to serve. Belle Isle deserves more than backroom deals. Miami Beach deserves more. We deserve better leadership that listens, plans, has a master plan for what this city is going to look like, and delivers for its residents. We can do better. We can do better for Belle Isle, and I know we can do better for Miami Beach. Thank you.
It's me again, David.
Hi, Joe.
How are you?
Good.
Thank you so very
By the way, I just want everyone to know, there's one more speaker who wants to speak, and I'll get to the Zoom.
Okay. Honey, I just want to say that.
Joe, if you a little closer.
First of all, thank you so much. Thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it. I know all these people appreciate it. And thank you for helping out as well. I don't know what we do without you. I just want to clarify that I'm not here to complain about the standard or to complain about development or to complain about the beautiful proposal that I saw that's, I think, architecturally magnificent, you know, the proposed new building for the standard. It's not about that for me. And I don't see this as a forum on whether one is opposed to or in favor of whatever the standards plans are. I think we're all here because of what happened with BIRA, maintaining that they represented all of us. In my case, I first took exception to it because, as you know, I live on Ferry Lane, and I'm blessed to live right on the water. To put it in perspective, when that letter was sent out about increasing the hours of disco and whatever, I can look at the disco box from my backyard. I'm constantly making decisions on the weekend whether to have their music or turn my music up higher to blast it out. I mean, I'm like, you know, less than half a football field away on the water right there. I can tell the DJ, you know, please play this. I didn't get that letter. I didn't hear anything about that letter. I didn't get the damn email. It's just ridiculous. It's absurd. And I understand that whatever the standard does, and it's all of our treasure and it impacts all of us. And I'm very happy to share the lovely park and my lovely neighbors on the other side of Island Avenue. But honestly, it just, you know, the fact that we were left out of the whole thing And now I find out that not only were we left out of it, the people who are going to be impacted by far more directly with any project that happens at the standard, not only were we left out of it, but all you guys were left out of it too. It's insane. Something is very rotten here, and I am so glad that you're exposing it, but I do want to go on the record that it's not for me about trying to, you know, hold back the standard. I have nothing but respect for them. I met with Miguel. He's a wonderful guy. The architect is amazing. And, you know, some of us will be for it and some of us not, but it has to be a process where we all have a voice.
Thank you, Joe.
Hi, thanks for hosting this tonight. My name is Laura Sejan. I'm at 5 Island Avenue, Island Terrace. So a lot of focus tonight on BIRA and the BIRA agreement. I think a lot of us in the room are concerned about the nature of the proposal from the standard per se. So for my benefit and the benefit of all the other residents, I just have a couple of questions about sort of process and timing, and to the extent that we may not feel like we were properly represented by the resident association, what opportunity do we have to weigh in on the pending decisions? So question number one, my understanding is the next step in the process is the land use group,
Correct.
committee, commission, I don't know the proper
The land
name.
use committee.
And when is that meeting scheduled, and can residents attend, and would there be an opportunity to voice opinion at
Yes.
that meeting?
I believe it's on February 20.
Okay, so February 20th, everybody. I don't know, that's why I'm asking the question. So the land use meeting.
Yes, and just so inform the audience, there's a lot of, there's, the good thing about Miami Beach government, at least now, because of the protections that, you know, some of my colleagues like Alex Fernandez and the mayor have put forward, is there's a long process for development now. So it has to go through multiple stages of reviews where there's tremendous amount of public input. So right now, this is going, the next stop is land use committee. After that, if it gets approved, it's going to the planning board. If it gets approved at the planning board, then it gets transmitted back to the city commission, and it has to go to the city commission twice. So it's going to have 4 stops, essentially,
Okay.
before a
So
final
next
vote.
up is land use committee, February 20th. Where is that meeting
Here.
held? Okay, it's here, and can residents come and voice opinion?
Yes.
Okay. And then in terms of the final say, that's the commissioners, right?
Mhm.
And what's your personal view on what's been proposed by the developers
I
of
mean,
the
I think it's
standard?
egregious. I mean, I'm certainly not going to approve this project. I mean, I'll be on the record saying that right now. In fact, believe it or not, I actually had the developer in my office. Brandon was here, and I told him, I go, listen, you know, he actually came to me and he's like, look, what can we do to, like, you know, kind of massage this, and what can we do to, you know, make this happen, because it's a really good project, and we want to see it go forward. You know, what are you willing to do? And I was very upfront with him, and I told him, first of all, you need to get that money back, okay? And if they're not willing to give you the money back, then you need to sue your attorney in malpractice and get that money back that way. Secondly, you're gonna need to start all over. You gotta actually do a real engagement. And I was very forthcoming about this, and I let him know exactly my thoughts. And then a week later, they changed the agreement so that's not contingent.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I guess, I mean, the point I'm trying to make is that I don't want us collectively as residents of Belle Isle to get so distracted by the issues with the agreement that BIRA made that we fail to voice our opinion on what's being proposed for the redevelopment of the hotel. Many of us are opposed to that, right? For all the reasons that have been stated.
and that's,
So I just think for all of us, we need to make sure we go to the land use meeting. We need to make sure we come to the commissioners' meetings. when they will be voting on this. We can deal with the issues with BIRA separately. Let's not let them get too tangled together. Okay? Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay, so it looks like we have one more in-person speaker, and then I'm going to get to Zoom.
Hi, Christina. I'm a resident of Belle Isle, and everyone made a lot of great points today. So it's funny because as a member of the Standard and just a lover of the community, I look around and there's a lot of you I know and don't know, but I ask this. How many places in Miami Beach, I had to write it, can you have a 10-minute walk to go get homemade bread, post office, restaurant shopping on Lincoln Road, and still be able to walk home at 3 in the morning as a female in Miami Beach? We have a unicorn on Belle Isle, okay? And really, you know, legal issues, concerns aside, the fundamental question really is, how does a neighborhood in Miami Beach stay a neighborhood while we grow and serve the reimagined community, which is a great word, but preserving the integrity? This is a question to all the commissioners when you have to make your decision to vote. Some are here, some are not. And you should ask yourself, how can we support where we are now and not revisit it, knowing that the community with this unprecedented turnout had not had engagement for 1.5 years before a decision was made. So I ask that that question is asked to whomever is voting, and I also make an ask that we look back on the voting process to this point, because if it weren't for two very brave people, Joe and Scott, that spoke up at the other meeting, one of them I believe is here now, none of us would really be here right now. Because our necks are on the line, our faces, we love the Standard, we'd love to see certain things, we just weren't asked. So please let us continue to walk for bread at 3 a.m. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to start going to some of the Zoom. There's just a handful, and I promise, what is 8:30? I mean, I got to do some bed and bath time soon, so I'm just going to do a hard stop at 9, which is in 20 minutes. So I see there's Scott Foxman. I'm going to, you got to unmute yourself, Scott.
Yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
I'm gonna be quick because it's late. You probably heard me before, but we live on Century Lane. We own the home for 16 years, my wife and myself, and I have no problem with the Standard. Standard's always been good to me. Matter of fact, we found our home from the Standard, looking over the water, and we're club members at the Standard. And in terms of the project, I don't have any problems with that either, but that's not what I'm here for. I'm here for BIRA. BIRA, I think, handled this very poorly. To begin with, we're finding out tonight that not only was there no transparency, but there was a conscious effort to hide the entire deal. That's a big problem. Then two, they took the money out of BIRA and put it in a separate organization. Really bad. Then three is they made a deal without already asking their members what to do with the money. So they're getting money without knowing where it's going. All of that's bad. But the worst part is saying they represent all of us. That's absolutely not true. They've never approached me about anything. And the members on Century and Ferry have totally different needs. We're all single family homers. My main deal is noise and traffic, like Joe. Joe and I are in the exact same situation. And my main deal is noise and traffic. But they never asked us. Matter of fact, I wrote to Sean Patrick Bryant right after the August meeting. And I told him that, I had all my concerns, and he never asked me any of my concerns, even though I reached out. So my big problem is BIRA. Well, I'm not here to figure out answers, but I can tell you, if I was the Standard, I would void my contract with BIRA saying and asking them to return the money because they falsely represented that they represented all of the residents on Belle Island, which they do not. I would then, if the Standard wants to go forward, I build a consensus of neighbors, a broad consensus of neighbors, and hear the neighbors' concerns. Because BIRA clearly doesn't represent people. but that's my whole deal. I'm not against the standard, but I have a real problem with what's happened.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it. Okay, I'm gonna go to free Fires I.
Yes,
You gotta
speaking.
unmute. Okay, you're
I'm
live.
not gonna repeat what everybody else said, but obviously thank you, Commissioner Suarez, for uncovering this scheme. All I'll add is that not only should the developer be suing the so-called lobbyist attorney for malpractice, but the city, I think, also has an obligation to, if you're saying that this person broke the law, I mean, that's obviously a legal issue. But apart from that, the city should not be allowing a lobbyist with this much disregard for ethics and law to be representing any business in front of the city. And as you know, Commissioner, he also represents Michael Stern on the 1250 debacle. And who's to say? I mean, the WAVNA Association also recently had some turmoil. And who's to say, or who would doubt that this lobbyist, this attorney, is not making similar offers to people at other neighborhood associations? So please, Commissioner, continue your good work. And Mayor Minor loves to say we're a law and order city, and he's a law and order mayor. This purveyor of corruption should not be allowed to do any business with the city anymore. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, there's a JM. JM, you gotta unmute yourself.
I'm unmuted. My name is Jeremy Morales. I'm a resident of Belle Isle. Grew up on the beach on 58th and North Bay. I live in Bella Isla, so on the north side of Belle Isle, probably second most impacted from any development. But I guess the one point that I wanted to add, I agree with Scott in totality. I think it's not really the developer that there's an issue with. It's more about this community board, like he said, representing that they speak for the community when they don't. And the other point that I wanted to kind of bring up is it's okay and it's normal for developers to obviously contribute to the community to get certain modifications to develop their plan. And I don't think there's anything wrong from what I saw of the standard plan. But it's weird to have the lack of transparency. And then it's also weird when we're talking about public benefits to also discuss within this discussion improving somebody's seawall for a condo association. If anything, like it would be great to have a voice heard. And like you said, there's going to be more opportunities to do it. But yeah, I think it's just it's a little bit more of an issue, not with the developer, but more with the community association.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have Paula King.
Hi, can you hear me?
Sure can.
Okay, hi, I'm Paula King. I'm a North Beach resident, and I wish you would move up here, David. But what I would like to say is no one's discussed impact fees, which every project in Miami Beach should be charging giant impact fees because the benefits for a developer developing here are unbelievable. If you go to any other city, they charge really big impact fees. I mean, if we were charging the proper impact fees, all seawalls could be corrected. Everything, in New York, they do schools, they build parks, they do everything else. I don't know why the city of Miami Beach is not putting more emphasis on collecting impact fees. We could have all of our storage problems repaired, everything else. Why aren't we collecting impact fees?
Okay, thank you, Paula. And then last we have iPhone. You have to unmute. I guess they were. Okay, it doesn't look like you have to unmute yourself on iPhone. Okay, I guess not. So that's it. That's all the people willing to speak. I'll stay back for a couple, minutes if you guys want to meet me in person, and then I adjourn the meeting. Thanks. Thanks, PJ.